Dr. Jack Hawkins, Jr., Chancellor of Troy University, the entire system, welcome to Troy Public Radio, Capital City Connection, and Trojan Television.
Well, thank you, Carolyn. It's always a pleasure to be with you, and I want to thank you and our colleagues for doing a great job. Never a day goes by that I don't listen to you.
We appreciate you. You are a war hero. You were wounded in action in Vietnam as a Marine, and we're here in a Veterans Day special to talk about what you experienced and the aftermath. Where do you want to start?
Well, you know, I have such deep appreciation, as does Troy University. In fact, 30 years ago, that was one of the influencers I had to serve at Troy. It's close connection to the military, and I'm so proud of what Troy does for our men and women in uniform. So we can probably begin by talking about freedom is not free. You know, it requires the best of all of us, and particularly those who put on that uniform.
Take us back to the Vietnam War, and when you came home, the reception was vastly different from today.
Well, the Vietnam War, that was, as we entered the 60s and into the early 60s, I remember it as if it were yesterday. It was almost as if we were on an island of innocence in a sea of social change, and our country was experiencing great change. We were coming from a time of peace, a time of prosperity in the 50s and into the early 60s, into a different racial situation with the civil rights movement, and then Vietnam began. And when we sent troops into Vietnam in 1965, in a large way, our country really changed. And but what you learn from those experiences is that freedom is for everybody, but it's paid for by a few. And generally, that few would be those who put on the uniform, go into harm's way, and I'm not so sure they are the ones who make the greatest sacrifice. I think my own experience would yield that families make the greatest sacrifice. I know I went to Vietnam, and on the heels of me coming home, my brother, who was also a Marine, was sent. And so for almost 3 years running, my mother probably paid the greatest price for our service. But it was a different time, a different era, and as I've told so many people, I'm delighted to see what I witness in today's world, where the war and the warrior, they're separated, and one may not agree with the war itself, but let's not hold in contempt those men and women who are asked to go into harm's way and make that sacrifice. And so we've learned a lot, and I had hoped too that that we would learn the lesson coming out of Vietnam, that if we weren't willing to sacrifice the last among us, let's not sacrifice the first.
Another aspect of that war and the war before it, the wars before it and since, people are unaccounted for. POWs, MIAs, we still have no closure.
Yeah, and you see that. I know I've been to Vietnam any number of times in recent years, and we still have efforts underway to try to find remains, of those who were shot down, lost, blown away. And it's unfortunate that we do have so many unaccounted for veterans. But by the same token, we can take great comfort, I think, in the fact that our country does everything that's possible. Great expense, great effort, and of course there's no expense too great to try to find those who have paid the highest price. But our country is committed to not leaving anyone on the battlefield, whether they are alive or not. So I think that's one unique dimension of America. We have our problems, but we still are unified in that effort.
I want you to take us back to a moment that surprised you. Troy University, of course, is Alabama's international university. Take us back to a graduation ceremony. You were at the podium in Vietnam.
Well, it was really remarkable. You know, I left Vietnam. I went there in early April 1968. I came home in May of 1969, never with the intention of going back. I mean, most of us, when we left Vietnam, we were ready to put that in the rearview mirror and not go back, even to try to forget it. Most of us, when we came home, just tried to get on with our lives and you know, make the most out of the situation that you faced. In 2002, though, we were invited to go back to Vietnam, or go to Vietnam, to discuss seriously the offering of programs, academic programs. And so I went. That was my first time back, and we did develop partnerships with universities in Hanoi, which was the capital of old North Vietnam as we knew it, and in Ho Chi Minh City, which was known back during the war as Saigon. And today we offer programs in both of those major cities. But it was in 2008, February the 28th, 2008, that we held our first graduation ceremony. So it took us 6 years to build the programs and to educate the students, and then to celebrate their educational achievements. And it was in Hanoi at a ceremony on that date that the young man who was the honor graduate of our class, and I had told no one that I had been there during the war. I saw no advantage to that, particularly in Hanoi. And this young man, he demonstrated the power of the internet. He had gone and researched, and when he introduced me, and that was his role that day, to welcome all of us and to introduce me so I could speak to this group, he said, "We'd like to welcome Dr. Hawkins back to Vietnam," because he was, quote, a soldier during the American War. And I sat there thinking, now you've done it. I can't imagine what these people must be thinking. And as he made that introduction, and incidentally, that student is today a rising executive with Samsung, and he's doing quite well, and has proven the value of the American degree is very much alive and well. But I looked into the audience as he made that comment to welcome me back, and there was a gentleman in the audience that was wearing a green uniform and had medals on his chest. He was obviously an officer, a retired officer. He was about my age. And we looked at each other, eyes locked, and I guess he was wondering the same thing that I may have been wondering, and, have we seen each other before? Well, it was really one of those surreal experiences, because afterwards, immediately after the ceremony, he came running down the aisle, and I didn't know if he was coming down to tackle me and do battle or what he was going to do, but he simply wanted to come down, and we embraced, we shook hands, and then he wanted to have a photograph taken because he was there to celebrate the graduation of his great nephew from Troy University. And I thought, as that experience concluded that day, how the world has changed. But I might add a footnote to that. I walked outside the building, and I really hadn't expected this, but there was a young lady, a reporter from the national television station, that abruptly placed a microphone in front of me, and I didn't anticipate that, and I didn't know she was going to try to do a quick interview. And she said, "Well, how does it feel coming back after 40 years?" And if I had thought about it, I would have given her a more academic response. But I sort of blurted out, I said, "Well, the first time we came, we were carrying bullets, and when we came back, we were carrying books. And at my age, I prefer books." Well, I didn't know, but that night, that appeared on national television in Vietnam, so it was not a very academic response, but it was from the heart, and it just shows how the world changes.
It carried the message.
Carried the message. And I'm so proud today, too, Carolyn, that we have over 1,000 graduates from Troy University in Vietnam, and they are truly making a difference. I've often thought, as I've seen these students come and go, that we may have just lost the battle. We may yet win the war, and it'll be an economic war, because these students truly want to know more about the free market system and how to be successful in business.
You have used education as an instrument for bringing people together.
In so many ways, I think that's true. I'm proud of what's happened here in Alabama. When we arrived in Troy in 1989, we only had 40 international students, and today we have upwards of 80 countries represented in our student body, well more than 400 from China alone. I think it's by, you build good international relationships one student at a time. And I know when our students graduate, many of them go back to their native countries, they are great ambassadors for this country. And that's the best kind of ambassador, one-to-one, people to people. And today we're offering programs in many other countries to our military men and women, not only by distance learning electronically, but also on the ground in countries like Japan and Korea, and an extension of Japan, Okinawa, and in other countries like Malaysia and Vietnam and China. And in fact, we just had a team of people to go and conduct graduation ceremonies over the last 3 weeks in both Malaysia and Vietnam. And so Troy University continues to serve the state and the region and the country, but we're also serving the world. And I'm really proud of that because I believe our students are globally competitive, and that's where they'll need to be and what they'll need to be for the world ahead, is not just competitive on a state basis, but competitive on a global basis.
You are talking with people right now who are military families. You're talking with people in the military. You're talking with prospective military enrollees. What's your message on Veterans Day to them?
First and foremost, and I think it was Billy Graham who said it best, he said the two most underutilized words in any language are those two words, thank you. So I want to begin by saying to those men and women who are serving, and the families of those men and women, and those who have served, thank you for your service. It's a great sacrifice to serve this country, but on the other hand, I think it's a great reward. I can think of no greater influence, short of my faith and my family, than service in the United States Marine Corps. It instilled in me and all those others, and regardless of the nature of the uniform, to have served, I think, is the key. And you certainly learn the fundamentals of what's important. And it makes you a better leader. I know some of the most important leadership lessons I learned as both from mistakes and maybe on occasion doing it the right way. But I learned so much as a young lieutenant leading troops in Vietnam, and it's there that you learn to lead from the front. You need to learn by example, and attitude is critically important, and to have the communication skills and to impart your vision to those around you, and that comes through the discipline instilled in service. And so I'm grateful that I had an opportunity to serve, and I applaud those who do.
So I take it you're encouraging young people to also join.
No doubt. In today's world, 25% of our young people ages 18 to 24, they can't serve due to physical reasons. 25% can't serve because of intellectual reasons, academic reasons perhaps. 25% other reasons, sometimes legal, unfortunately. And so that leaves only about 25% of our young people who are eligible to serve, and only about 1% step forward. I believe this country benefits from that 1%, but I also believe the other 99% could benefit through service. And it's just so important, I think, to our country, and in terms of grooming the leaders of the future. And so I thank those who serve. I also encourage those who may be considering it, as I did with a great nephew just this morning. He called me about service in the Marine Corps, and I said, I think you'll be the big beneficiary if you do that.
Chancellor Hawkins, we want to take a moment to thank you not only for your service to your country in a military capacity in the Vietnam War, but your international leadership in education.
Well, it's been a privilege, to have been, to have been given an opportunity to serve our country, and I've had actually, the good fortune, the blessing to serve 4 outstanding institutions in my life. The first was the United States Marine Corps. The second was during the 70s at the University of Alabama, Birmingham, at the medical center there. The third was the Alabama Institute for Deaf and Blind, where I had the privilege of serving for a decade as president. To have been able to serve our university, Troy University, for the last 30 years has been a remarkable experience. But I'm satisfied that as you go through life, you realize that life is about relationships. It's not about things. And to have had the opportunity to build relationships in this country and beyond has been just a great blessing and an opportunity that I wouldn't exchange that for anything. And so it's I've heard thank you, but it's me who needs to say thank you to Troy University and our board, our faculty and staff, and most particularly our students and alumni.
And congratulations on your 30 years at the helm of Troy University, the system.
Thank you, Carolyn. When that was announced, I really hadn't thought about what it might mean. And the young man in our public affairs shop came in and he said, "I have some good news and I have some bad news." And I said, "Well, tell me." And he said, "Well, the good news is that you're one of the longest-serving CEOs of a public university." And he said, "In fact, you're the second longest-serving CEO of a public university in America." And I thought, well, that, I guess in a way that may be flattering. I said, "What's the bad news?" And he said, "The bad news is that there's a lady ahead of you, but she's about to retire." And she has. So that makes me the longest-serving. But it's all been good. Troy University is a great institution.
I want to thank you for joining us for this Veterans Day special.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for your good work and for the opportunity to say thank you to our veterans and those on active duty today.
Thank you.